I was one trade away from blowing up both of my funded accounts last week. And if you look over here, you can see that my account balance started off at 24,485. And then on February 2nd, it went all the way down to 24,150 intraday before I caught a big short that got me all the way back up to plus 165 on the day. So that was pretty crazy for me. The best setups this week for me were definitely the break and retest of the initial balance. And those literally saved my account from almost blowing up to giving me a healthy buffer going into this week. Let's go through some quick initial balance definitions and stats that I look for to set up my trades for the break and retest. So the initial balance is the range set in the first hour that the market opens. What you could do is you can start marking the top and the bottom of the range in that initial balance once 10:30 a.m. Eastern hits. Mark the range of the highs and the lows, and you start looking at how the market reacts when it breaks in and those type of things. The IB is super important to me because it tells me a lot about how the day can play out. For example, last Friday, February 6th, we can see that the IB was about 283 points, which is close to the average. When I compare this IB size to the ADR, it tells me that the IB has a lot of room to expand and can hit extension targets like 25% or 50% extension of the IB. On other days, if the IB, let's just say, is above average and is around 400 and the ADR is also 400, then it might mean that the IB's already used up most of the range that we can expect, and it might be more rotational than expanding. Obviously, market context and high time frame reads will rule over everything, but it's just trying to build all the right clues to tell me how I should play the day out. After we established what type of initial balance we're looking at, the next thing I want to do is validate whether or not the break or retest can be in play. So I want a couple of things to happen before I really start considering a trade. So one of two things needs to happen. The first thing is, do we get at least a 10% ADR extension? Meaning, if the ADR is 400 points, we need to see price extend 40 points beyond the initial balance. Or two, I want to see a 25% initial balance extension. Same example, if initial balance is 400 points, then I want to see price at least extend 100 points beyond IB. I find that both of those are pretty good validating gates to at least start considering the trade as it comes back to retest IB. Usually you'll get this, but in case there's some volatility, I also want to make sure that you also get a 5-minute close beyond IB. What this does is it tells me that there's initiative and acceptance beyond the initial range. Let's take a look at a few examples now. So if you look on this chart here, you can see where the red line is. That's where initial balance was, and it's also high time frame resistance. So every single time price broke below, it met the ADR requirement, and then every time pushed back up for the retest itself, it would sell off. This happened actually 3 times, and I took the short every single time, with the third one getting 100 points on my TP2 runner. So that's just an example of like how you want to play and what it looks like visually on an actual chart. Let's go through a quick example of a live trade recording where I took this IB high retest on February 6th. This will show my thought process as price is approaching IB and how I entered. So you can see here, we're making higher highs, higher lows, then overnight high holds, and we push to break above previous day high to make a higher high. And then we have an earlier IB high break at 8:10 a.m. So at this point, to me, all signs are pointing bullish. You can also see that price breaks above the 10% ADR extension before it pulls back into IB high for the second time. From here, we'll zoom in and take a look at the order flow. One of the things I'm really keen on is looking at volume per second increasing as price is approaching my area of interest. So the top number is going to be the volume per second. And you can see that the average volume was kind of like around 7 to 8 for about like 5 to 10 minutes. And then you just see it start jumping right to 13, 12, 19 as we're approaching IB high. And the reason I like looking at the volume per second increasing is because I want to see if there's anyone being really, really aggressive as price gets to my area of interest, and if they get rewarded when they get there, or if they fail. So recapping the last trade I took on Friday, you can see over here that we're selling off, and you can see some buying finally stepping in as we approach IB high. IB high looks like it's holding right now. You can see some of that negative delta getting unwound a little bit, and they're still pushing, but not getting a lot of forward progress. So as I'm watching this, I'm like, okay, what are we going to do from here? What are buyers going to do? What are sellers going to do? And as I see price pushing up, I want to enter right above all that buying, but I'm not able to get filled. So I chase it all the way up to the breaker candle entry. And then I'm going to move my targets. The extended target, the first target should be TP1 at 2R. And then I'm looking for a 25% IB extension for TP2. Kind of wish I actually waited for this red bubble to pop up first. This means that there's a big negative delta coming in. And usually if I'm going long, I like to see this come up first before I enter, and I found pretty good success doing it that way. So if I was a little bit more patient, I probably could have got a better entry that meets my parameters. over here, price is kind of pushing, and I'm like, oh shit, like it's kind of hovering on my entry, getting a little bit nervous here, and I'm starting to see sellers coming again and again and getting pretty aggressive. And I'm like, shit, was this a bad idea? Did I chase it too high? But I'm like, all right, I'm already in the trade. I think I'm still like pretty bullish, so I'm just holding on to it. You see sellers get no continuation there, and buyers starting to defend. More buying deltas coming in. So I'm just kind of watching this, like, all right, what's going to happen here? Don't want to get overly committed to this because I didn't have the best entry, so I'm just kind of watching it and thinking about like whether or not I want to scratch. Not the greatest thing, I know, but trying to just work on not being overly committed to a position, but also not overly managing it either. So it's just trying to find like a delicate balance right now. At this point, I'm just really watching the trade, watching on phone, trying not to manage it too much. So as this one's coming up here, I'm like, okay, this is pretty interesting. A lot of sellers coming in, but buyers are really defending this. So we're going from like negative 113 delta, pushing up. We've already flipped all that delta. We closed really strong. After hitting TP1, I move my stop to break even. And I usually do this on most of my trades where I'm looking for a TP2 just because I want to protect my mental capital. I know it's probably one of those other things that a lot of people say you shouldn't do, but for me, usually if I hit TP1 and comes back and stops me out, I really get tilted and pisses me off for the rest of the day. Rest of this is just me managing and watching my trade. I'm trying to trail it by the 2-minute mark. So the way I trail my runners is after price closes above my TP1, then I'll start trailing my stop based off of the 2-minute chart. So every swing low from the 2-minute, I'll start moving it up. And as we close and make higher highs, I can just continue to move it up and trail it. So unfortunately here, I kind of got like swept out and price eventually hit my target. But I have to protect my mental capital and I have to follow my system and my rules as best as I can. Otherwise, I'll just keep doing like discretionary shit with my TP2s. So yeah, that's the rest of the trade. So hopefully that was helpful for everyone to see like how I manage my trades, how I take my entries and stops and things like that. Appreciate you guys watching the video. Let me know if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'm curious to know if anyone else trades IB and how you guys all approach the initial balance.